The air was thick with tension, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Jason stood alone on the edge of a desolate field, the night sky above him so vast and empty it seemed like it might swallow him whole. His heart beat loudly in his chest, matching the rhythm of the storm clouds swirling overhead. He hadn't meant for it to come to this, not really. But now, as the golden light from the ancient relic in his hands flickered and hummed, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything had been leading to this moment. With trembling hands, he wiped the sweat from his brow and glanced around. No one could see him out here, no one but the strange, ethereal being who hovered just a few feet away, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and unease. "You understand what you are asking for, human?" The voice was deep, resonating in his chest like the hum of distant thunder. It was both cold and strangely comforting, as if it had traveled across the cosmos to reach him. The genie, or whatever it was, floated effortlessly in the air, its glowing blue form shimmering with energy. Jason's eyes narrowed. He had to make the wish. He had no choice. He didn't come all this way, faced impossible odds, and fought. To survive, just to back down now. "I understand," Jason said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I've thought about this long enough. And I'm sure." The genie's eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light, studied him for a moment, before responding. "Very well. Your wish shall be granted. But remember, once made, there is no turning back." Jason's throat tightened as he felt the weight of the words. He didn't want to think about the consequences. He couldn't. Not now. Not when he was so close. Taking a deep breath, he spoke the words that had been echoing in his mind for days, weeks, maybe even longer. "I wish for the power to be able to change the course of my life, to have control over my future." There was a long, suffocating silence. For a moment, Jason wondered if he had said the wrong thing. The genie didn't respond, its form flickering with an almost imperceptible shift in the air around it. Then, without warning, the being's expression shifted from one of curiosity to something far darker, far more disturbed. "You wish for such a thing?" the genie asked, its voice no longer calm but edged with a strange dissonance. "You cannot fathom the weight of this request." Jason stood firm. He had come this far. He couldn't back out now. "I know what I'm asking for," he said, voice resolute. "I need this. Please, grant it." The genie didn't answer immediately. Instead, the energy around them seemed to thrum louder, vibrating with power as the ground beneath Jason's feet trembled. The storm above him seemed to grow more violent, the wind howling like a living creature. The genie's form flickered again, and Jason felt a sudden surge of panic, but he fought to keep it under control. And then, without warning, the genie's eyes flared with blinding light. Jason instinctively raised his hand to shield his eyes. As the world around him seemed to warp and distort, time itself seemed to stretch, as though the very fabric of reality was bending to the genie's will. The power was overwhelming, a force so immense that Jason felt his very soul being tugged and twisted. He heard the genie's voice once more, but this time it was different. The tone was not filled with the eerie calm it once held. Instead, it was filled with shock, disbelief, even fear. "You have no idea what you've done," the genie whispered, its voice now trembling with an emotion Jason couldn't place. Jason's head spun, and before he could speak, the ground beneath him cracked open. A blinding flash of light engulfed him, and the universe seemed to shift, distorting and twisting in ways that defied logic and reason. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. Jason gasped for breath, falling to his knees. On the cold, cracked earth, the storm had ceased, and the world around him had returned to its eerie stillness. The genie was gone, its glowing form vanishing without a trace. But something had changed. Jason's heart pounded in his chest, and he could feel the power coursing through his veins. It wasn't the power he had expected. It wasn't the control over his life that he had imagined. This was something far darker, far more dangerous. He stood slowly, his knees shaking as he took in his surroundings. The field, the storm, the night sky. It all felt different now, as if it had all shifted just like he had. The very air felt charged, crackling with energy. He could hear whispers on the wind, strange voices speaking in languages he didn't understand. For the first time, Jason felt truly alive, but at the same time, he felt a deep, gnawing sense of unease. What had he done? What had he unleashed? Suddenly, a voice, not the genie's, but something else, echoed in his mind. It was clear, sharp, and unyielding. "You've opened the door to something far greater than you can imagine, human." Jason froze, his blood running cold as the voice reverberated. Through his skull, it was alien, and it was everywhere. In his mind, in the air around him. The whispers grew louder until they were a cacophony of sound, swirling around him. It was as if the very fabric of the universe was alive, aware of his presence. Who are you?" Jason gasped, his voice trembling as he looked around, trying to find the source of the voice. "You will know soon enough," the voice replied cryptically. "But for now, understand this. The wish you made has consequences, far greater consequences than you ever realized." Jason's pulse quickened as he staggered back, looking for any sign of the genie, any clue to explain what was happening. But there was nothing, only the eerie silence of the field and the hum of energy vibrating beneath his feet. And then, out of the corner of his eye, Jason saw something move, a shadow, a figure barely visible just at the edge of his vision. It was too fast, too elusive to be real. He blinked and it was gone. His heart skipped a beat. Was he being followed, watched? The whispers grew louder again, now more insistent, as if something or someone was drawing nearer. "You've made a mistake, human, and now you must face the consequences." Jason's mind raced as he tried to comprehend the enormity of what had just happened. The genie, the wish, the power, none of it made sense, but one thing was clear. His life had just become far more complicated than he could ever have imagined. Suddenly, the ground trembled again, stronger this time, as if something immense was approaching. Jason turned his head sharply, eyes scanning the horizon, but there was nothing to see. Only the same empty field, the same desolate landscape, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something far worse than he could have ever anticipated. He had made his wish, and now he had no idea what it would cost him. Jason's breath came in ragged gasps as he stumbled through the empty field, his mind reeling. The whispers in his head had not stopped, their alien cadence growing louder with each passing moment, a constant hum that made his skin crawl. Every shadow, every rustle in the wind now seemed ominous, as if the very fabric of reality was warping around him. He tried to focus, tried to calm himself. The wish, the genie, everything had gone wrong. What had he done? The power coursing through his veins felt like fire, unpredictable and dangerous. He could feel it, pulsing beneath his skin, surging through every cell in his body. But this was not the control he had envisioned. This was something far darker. As the night air grew colder, Jason's mind flashed back to the moment when he had made the wish. He had wanted to change his life, to escape the stagnation that had consumed him. He had wanted to seize control of his future, to take destiny into his own hands. But instead, he had unleashed something he couldn't begin to comprehend. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, filling his mind with strange images, symbols he didn't recognize. His vision blurred, and he felt a sharp pain at the base of his skull. He collapsed to his knees, gasping as the world around him spun. What Is this, he whispered, clutching his head in an attempt to block out the noise. You've awakened something. A voice, familiar yet alien, said in his mind. It wasn't the genie, but something else, something deeper, more ancient. The voice was malevolent, its tone dripping with contempt. You should have never made that wish, human. Jason's head snapped up, eyes darting around the field, in search of the source of the voice, but there was nothing, no one. Who are you, he demanded, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. The voice chuckled, a low, gravelly sound that seemed to echo through the very air. You don't yet understand, do you? You've opened a door that cannot be closed. You've invited forces into your world that you can't control. Jason's pulse quickened as the words sank in. Forces? What forces? The genie had warned him, but he had been so desperate for change that he hadn't listened. Now there was no turning back. Why can't I feel normal? Jason muttered, gripping his head as the pain intensified. What have I done? The voice answered with something that felt like a deep, painful sigh. You've made yourself a beacon, a conduit. Your wish has bound you to something far greater than your comprehension. You are no longer just a human, not entirely. And the price, Jason, is far more than you bargained for. Jason staggered to his feet, his mind racing. The ground beneath him felt different now, hollow, unstable, as if the earth itself was shifting in response to his wish. He needed answers. He had to find the genie. But where could it be? What had it meant by the price? Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet trembled, a deep vibration that reverberated through his bones. The air grew thick with static, the wind picking up in violent gusts, howling through the trees. Jason turned toward the horizon, his eyes narrowing as he saw a figure in the distance, a silhouette moving impossibly fast. It was a shadow, dark, against the storm-lit sky, its form almost indistinct. But as it drew closer, Jason's stomach churned with a sickening sense of dread. This wasn't just a trick of the light. This was something real. The figure stopped a few feet away from him, and Jason froze. He could feel it now, an immense presence, something ancient, powerful, and unmistakably alien. The figure's features began to take shape, revealing a tall, slender being with skin that shimmered like liquid metal. Its face was obscured, its eyes glowing with an eerie light that seemed to pierce through him. It was unlike anything Jason had ever seen, even in the science fiction books he used to read. That this was no human, no being from Earth. Who are you? Jason asked, his voice trembling, but his fear tempered by the odd sense of power that surged within him. The alien did not speak, but its presence filled the space around them, overwhelming Jason with a sense of urgency. The creature raised one long, elegant arm, and the air around them seemed to bend and distort, like heat rising from the pavement on a summer day. A low hum resonated from the being's chest, filling Jason's ears. The wish you made, human, the alien finally spoke, its voice deep and melodic, yet chilling. It has drawn the attention of those who do not tolerate such interference. You have become a pawn in a game you cannot understand. Jason's heart raced. A game? What are you talking about? The alien tilted its head slightly as if considering his question. You have altered the fabric of reality itself with your wish. You have invited forces beyond your control to enter this world. The word sent a shiver down Jason's spine. What forces? The alien's eyes flickered, a flash of something ancient and terrifying passing through its glowing gaze. The ones who will reclaim what you have taken, the ones who will extract the cost of your foolishness. Jason stepped back, his breath coming in short gasps. What do you want from me? The alien raised its hand once again, and the air around them seemed to tremble with power. I am here to guide you, to help you understand the consequences of your actions. If you are to survive this, you must learn quickly. Time is no longer your ally. Before Jason could respond, the alien vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving him standing in the middle of the field, alone and shaken. The whispers in his head grew louder again, now more frantic, as if something was closing in. Jason staggered backward, clutching his head, feeling the raw power thrumming through him. He had to find answers. He had to understand what was happening. As he turned to leave, he noticed something strange in the distance, an object shimmering in the twilight. He couldn't make out what it was, but the pull toward it was undeniable. His body moved of its own accord, his legs carrying him forward, almost as if the wish had somehow taken control of him. The object came into focus as he approached. It was a large, glowing stone, half buried in the ground. Jason knelt beside it, his hands trembling as he reached out to touch it. The moment his fingers made contact, a surge of energy shot through him. His vision blurred, and he collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air. He could feel the stone's power coursing through his veins, mixing with the energy from the wish, amplifying it. The whispers in his mind exploded into a cacophony of alien voices, each one speaking in a language Jason could not understand. But one voice stood out from the rest. "You are not alone, human," it said, its tone cold and distant. "You have awakened us, and we will come for you." Jason's eyes shot open, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel something, someone, watching him. The world around him seemed to shift once again, the air thick with tension. The whispers grew louder, now a roar in his ears. And then a single terrible thought echoed in his mind. He had made a terrible mistake. Jason's body trembled from the strange, overwhelming power coursing through him. Every nerve seemed to hum with energy, and the air around him felt charged, thick with an otherworldly presence. His hand still hovered above the glowing stone, its surface now warm to the touch, as if it were alive. His breath came in shallow gasps as he slowly pulled his hand back, the sensation of the stone's energy still lingering on his skin. His heart was pounding in his chest, the echoes of the voice still ringing in his ears. "You are not alone, human." The words had haunted him ever since he'd touched the stone. But what did it mean? Who was the voice? What had he unleashed? Jason stood slowly, his legs unsteady beneath him as the ground seemed to shift around him. The air felt thick, dense, as if the very fabric of reality was warping in response to the strange forces he had awakened. He could feel it now, an energy beyond his control. It pulsed through the earth, through the very atmosphere itself, calling to something within him, a connection he didn't fully understand. He staggered backward, eyes scanning the field for any sign of danger. But there was nothing. No alien figure, no glowing stones, just the emptiness of the land stretching out before him. But then something shifted. The air seemed to ripple, the world around him blurring and distorting as if viewed through a heat haze. Jason blinked rapidly, trying to clear his vision, but the world continued to twist and bend in impossible ways. And then he heard it. A faint, distant hum. At first, it was barely noticeable, a low frequency that resonated deep in his bones. But as he focused on it, the sound grew louder, more insistent. It was coming from everywhere, from the very air itself. Jason could feel the vibrations in his chest, a pressure that built with each passing second. The voices, they were back. But this time, they weren't speaking to him alone. They were speaking to each other, their words mingling into a low, unintelligible murmur. The sound was oppressive, filling every corner of his mind, pushing him to the edge of his sanity. "Who are you?" Jason whispered, his voice shaking. The hum continued, now a steady roar in his ears. But this time, the voices seemed to answer. The tone shifting into something more distinct, more familiar. "We are the Watchers." Jason's heart skipped a beat. The Watchers. He'd never heard of them before, but the name struck a chord deep within him. The whispers grew louder, More frantic. "You have trespassed on sacred ground, human. You have disturbed the balance." Jason's pulse quickened as the ground beneath him trembled once more. He took a step back, but it was as if the world itself was moving with him. The ground buckled and shifted, as if responding to the unseen. Forces surrounding him. "What do you want from me?" he demanded, his voice cracking with fear and confusion. He had to get out of here. He had to find answers before it was too late. "You are the key," the voice responded, its tone both cold and knowing. "The one who will unlock the path, but the cost, it will be steep." Jason's chest tightened at the words. The path? What did that mean? And the cost? What was the price? What had he gotten himself into? Suddenly, the hum intensified, shaking the ground beneath his feet. Jason stumbled, trying to regain his balance, but it was as if the earth itself was rejecting him, pushing him back. His head spun, and for a brief moment he felt as though he was being pulled in two directions at once. He couldn't focus. The voices were everywhere, their words becoming more frantic. "We have seen you, human," the voices said, "and we have seen what you will become." Jason's mind reeled, his thoughts scattered. What did they mean? What was he becoming? His body felt like it was being pulled apart, the energy within him escalating to an unbearable intensity, and then, just as quickly as it had started, the chaos stopped. The air cleared. The ground beneath him settled, and the voices fell silent. Jason stood there, gasping for breath, his legs trembling beneath him. The world around him was eerily still, the oppressive weight of the energy that had been so overwhelming, now gone. He took a step forward cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. The silence was suffocating, but he could still feel the remnants of the energy in the air, like a faint echo of something far larger than himself. What had just happened? Was it over? Suddenly, the ground beneath him began to rumble again. Jason's eyes widened in panic as the world began to shift once more, but this time it wasn't just the ground. The sky itself seemed to twist and warp, the stars blinking out one by one. The entire universe around him seemed to crack, as if something was about to break free. Without thinking, Jason turned and ran, his heart pounding in his chest. He had to get away. He had to find safety. But no matter how fast he ran, no matter how far he went, the world around him kept shifting. The sky, the earth, the very air, it all felt like a dream, a nightmare. He stumbled through the field, gasping for air, his vision blurred by the intensity of the energy pulsing around him. He couldn't escape. It was everywhere. The whispers had returned, louder than ever before, echoing through his mind. "The door is open," they said, their voices hissing in his ears. "The path is set, and you are the key." Jason's legs gave out beneath him, and he collapsed to the ground, his body racked with exhaustion. His mind felt like it was unraveling, each second stretching into an eternity as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. He could feel the weight of the forces pressing down on him, pulling him in every direction. And then something shifted. Something snapped. A figure appeared before him, bathed in a faint, shimmering light. It was humanoid in shape, but its features were indistinct, like a mirage fading in and out of focus. Jason tried to focus on it, but his vision was hazy, his mind clouded by the overwhelming energy. "You have awakened us," the figure said, its voice echoing in his mind. "And now you must face the consequences." Jason's heart pounded in his chest as he struggled to make sense of what was happening. What do you want from me?" The figure remained silent for a long moment, its form flickering like a distant star on the brink of collapse. "The path has already been set, human. There is no turning back." Jason's eyes widened as the realization hit him. He was no longer just a human. He was something more. Something that had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. And now there was no escape. The figure's eyes glowed with an eerie light as it took a step closer to him. Jason's body froze, paralyzed by the sheer intensity of its gaze. The game has begun. Jason's breath came in ragged gasps as the figure before him flickered in and out of focus, its presence overwhelming. His mind raced, trying to grasp the gravity of what was happening. The world around him had already started to bend and twist, and now this enigmatic being, one that defied all logic, stood before him, its eyes glowing with a cold, alien light. The game has begun. Jason's pulse quickened at those words. What game? What path had he set in motion? The weight of his actions felt heavier than ever. He wanted to run, to escape the impossible situation he had found himself in, but his body refused to move. It was as if the very air around him was holding him in place, keeping him tethered to whatever nightmare he had unwittingly unleashed. The figure tilted its head slightly, its features barely discernible, as though it was observing him closely. Jason could feel its eyes on him, probing, searching. There was a coldness to its presence, an emotionless detachment that sent shivers down his spine. "Who are you?" Jason managed to ask, his voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. "What do you want from me?" The figure remained silent for a long moment, its glowing eyes unwavering. And then finally it spoke, its voice a low, reverberating hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We are not here to ask for anything. We are here to show you the truth." Jason's heart skipped a beat. The truth? What truth? What was it that he was supposed to learn, and why did it feel like the very fabric of his reality was about to be torn apart? "You are not the first," the figure continued, its voice cold and cryptic. "You are merely one of many who have stood at this threshold. The path you walk has been walked before, but each time it ends in destruction." Jason's mind reeled. Destruction? Was he really the cause of it all? He thought back to the first time he had touched the stone, the way it had felt like an irresistible force pulling at him. But it was more than that. It was like the universe itself had opened up to him, offering a glimpse of something beyond his understanding. "I don't understand," Jason said, his voice trembling. "What do you mean? What is this path? What is happening to me?" The figure took a step forward, its form shifting with an unnatural fluidity. It seemed to blur and pulse with energy, an unstable manifestation of pure power. Jason instinctively stepped back, but the figure's presence seemed to envelop him, drawing him in despite his attempts to retreat. "The path is a cycle," it explained, "a cycle of destruction and rebirth. It is the nature of all things. What you have awakened is the beginning of the end." Jason's mind felt like it was spiraling into chaos. "No, this can't be real. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want any of this." The figure's expression remained unchanged. "It is not about what you want. It is about what you have done. You cannot undo what has already been set in motion." Jason's chest tightened. He could feel the weight of those words pressing down on him. His mind screamed for answers, but it seemed like the more he tried to understand, the further he was pushed away from the truth. "Who are you?" Jason asked again, more forcefully this time. "What do you want me to do?" The figure's eyes glowed brighter for a brief moment, as if in recognition of Jason's persistence. "We are the Keepers. We have watched over this cycle for eons, and you, human, have become a part of it. But you are not alone." Jason's heart skipped a beat. Not alone. What did that mean? Suddenly, a ripple of energy surged through the air, distorting the space around them. The ground trembled beneath Jason's feet, and the sky above him seemed to crack open, revealing swirling clouds of darkness. It was as if the entire world was coming undone, piece by piece. "The cycle will continue," the figure intoned. "The Watchers will rise again, and the path will be set. But you have a choice that no one before you has had." Jason's head spun. He had a choice. How could he possibly have a choice in something so vast and beyond his comprehension? He had no idea what was happening, what kind of power he was dealing with, or how to stop it. What choice? Jason asked, his voice barely audible. He could feel the weight of the question in his chest, the burden of whatever answer the figure was about to give. The figure tilted its head again, its glowing eyes piercing into Jason's very soul. "You can end the cycle," it said, its voice barely a whisper. "You can break the chain of destruction, but to do so you must make a sacrifice." Jason's breath caught in his throat. A sacrifice? What did that mean? What kind of sacrifice? What kind of sacrifice? Jason asked, fear creeping into his voice. He didn't want to know, but he had to. He had to understand the choice that had been thrust upon him. The figure was silent for a moment before it spoke again, its voice heavy with the weight of the revelation. "The sacrifice is yourself." Jason's world tilted. He felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him, and for a moment he could hardly breathe. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what the figure had said. Sacrifice himself? Was that the only way out? But the figure's words weren't finished. "You will be given a power beyond your understanding, human, a power that will reshape everything. But to wield it, to control it, you must surrender your humanity." Jason's heart hammered in his chest. Surrender his humanity? What did that even mean? Was it even possible to lose himself, to lose everything that made him who he was? He swallowed hard, fighting the rising panic in his chest. "Is there no other way?" he asked, his voice desperate. The figure remained silent, its glowing eyes unreadable. It didn't need to say anything more. Jason understood now. The choice was his: embrace the unknown power, but at a cost he couldn't yet fathom. Before he could respond, the ground beneath him cracked open and the sky seemed to warp further. The voices of the watchers returned, their whispers a cacophony of sound that filled his mind, drowning out all other thoughts. They spoke in unison, their words both a warning and a promise. The path is set, the game is yours to play, but the cost is inevitable. Jason's knees buckled beneath him as the world around him spun. He couldn't take it anymore. The pressure, the voices, the weight of the choice. It was all too much, and then just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The whispers faded. The sky cleared. The ground settled, and in that moment Jason felt an overwhelming emptiness. The figure was gone. Jason was alone. He stared into the vast emptiness before him, the weight of the decision pressing down on him with an unbearable intensity. What had he just been told? What was he supposed to do now? "The path is set," the words echoed in his mind as he stumbled to his feet, every part of him trembling with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Jason stood motionless in the aftermath, his thoughts swirling like a violent storm. The world around him seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, the air thick with tension, as though the very fabric of reality was warping. He had been given a choice, one that no human had faced before, and the weight of it crushed him. Power, the kind of power that could change everything, but at a cost he couldn't yet comprehend. The price of humanity itself. "The sacrifice is yourself," the words echoed in his mind, gnawing at him with a relentless persistence. What did it mean to lose his humanity? Was it merely a metaphor, a warning about the corruption of power, or was it literal? Would he lose everything that made him? His memories, his emotions, his very essence? His mind struggled to grasp the magnitude of the decision, the implications of accepting or rejecting the power. Could he truly give up everything he had known, every part of himself for the sake of saving the world? Or was he simply playing into the hands of forces beyond his understanding? Jason clenched his fists, feeling the cold, sharp edge of fear bite into him. He had been through so much already, touched by the stone, brought face to face with the unimaginable, and now this impossible choice was thrust upon him. The weight of his responsibility was suffocating. He staggered back a few steps, trying to ground himself in the reality of what was happening. But there was no escape from the tension in the air, from the whispers that still lingered in the corners of his mind. "Is this what you wanted, Jason?" The voice came from behind him, so quiet at first that he wasn't sure if he had imagined it. But then it came again, sharper this time, with an edge of authority. "Is this the path you've chosen?" Jason spun around, his breath catching in his throat. The figure, no, the presence, stood before him once again, its form flickering, with a barely contained energy. The figure from before, the one who had delivered the cryptic message. Its glowing eyes burned through him as if it could see into the deepest corners of his soul. He couldn't stop himself from taking a step back, his heart racing. "What do you want from me?" he asked, the question trembling with desperation. "I don't understand any of this. What am I supposed to do?" The figure's expression remained unreadable, cold and detached. It regarded him with a strange intensity, as though considering him in some way that was beyond human comprehension. "You are the one who sought this," it said, its voice deep and unwavering. "You chose the stone. You unlocked the path. Now you must walk it." Jason's mind reeled. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't chosen this fate. He had only been searching for answers, seeking something beyond the ordinary, something that would make sense of the mysteries that had plagued him for so long. But now it felt as though he had opened a door that could never be closed, stepping into a world where the rules no longer applied. "I didn't ask for this," Jason said, his voice shaking with frustration and fear. "I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know this power would come with a price." The figure nodded slowly, as though understanding his turmoil. "There is always a price. There is no power without sacrifice. It is the law of the universe." Jason's fists tightened. "But why me? Why was I chosen for this?" The figure's gaze seemed to soften slightly, as if acknowledging Jason's confusion. "You were not chosen. You simply stumbled upon it, as many before you have. But now you must choose again. Embrace the power that lies within you, or walk away and watch everything you know crumble." The figure stepped forward and Jason's pulse quickened. There was something in the air now, something palpable. The energy seemed to shift, crackling with raw intensity. "You will never understand the forces at play here," the figure continued, its voice resonating in Jason's chest. "But you must make a decision. You cannot stand at the threshold and hesitate. The Watchers will not wait forever." Jason felt a cold chill crawl up his spine. The Watchers. He had heard the whispers before, but now their presence seemed to loom over him like a dark cloud that could not be outrun. He could feel their influence, their eyes watching him from the shadows, waiting for him to act. "I can't do this," Jason whispered, the words tasting like defeat on his tongue. "I'm not strong enough." The figure regarded him silently, its eyes unreadable. For a long moment, the only sound in the air was the pounding of Jason's heart in his chest. "Strength," the figure said, its voice low and almost contemplative. "Strength is not given. It is earned. And you, human, have already shown more strength than you realize." Jason's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" The figure paused, as though carefully considering its words. "You are more than you believe. You have the power within you to make a difference, to break the cycle, but it will not come easily. There will be tests, trials, and sacrifices, and you must decide if you are willing to pay the ultimate price." Jason swallowed hard. He felt the weight of the figure's words sink deep into his bones. He was standing on the precipice of something far greater than himself, something he couldn't possibly fully understand. The fate of the world, or perhaps more, was in his hands. The figure tilted its head, a faint glimmer of something almost like pity in its eyes. "It is never easy. But you, Jason, have already begun." Jason's mind raced. The choice, the power, the sacrifice, all of it was too much to bear. How could he possibly make a decision so monumental? He had never asked for any of this, yet it was all unfolding before him, demanding a response. "I don't know if I can," Jason said, his voice barely audible, his hands shaking. "I don't know if I can live with what comes next." The figure's expression softened, and for a fleeting moment it almost seemed human. "It is not about living with it," it said. "It is about what you will do with it, what you choose to become." Jason looked into the figure's eyes, searching for any sign of compassion or understanding. But there was none, only the cold, unyielding truth of the choice that lay ahead. A low rumble shook the ground beneath his feet, and Jason glanced around, his heart pounding. He could feel it, the presence of the Watchers, the invisible forces that hovered just beyond his perception. They were waiting, watching, judging. He had no time left. "Make your choice, Jason," the figure urged, its voice sharp and commanding. "The clock is ticking." And with those final words, Jason knew that whatever decision he made, it would change everything. Jason stood on the precipice of destiny, staring into the swirling chaos of the unknown. The air around him was thick with the raw power that had been unleashed by his decision, the very ground beneath his feet trembling with the weight of the moment. Everything had led to this. Every choice, every trial, every sacrifice. This was the culmination of everything that had come before, and yet, even with the enormity of the situation, the answer still eluded him. What was he supposed to do? The figure, the enigmatic entity that had guided him through the trials, stood silent beside him, its glowing eyes unwavering as it observed Jason's turmoil. There was no comfort in its presence, no solace in the cold, indifferent stare. It was not here to offer guidance or compassion. It was simply here to bear witness to the decision Jason was about to make. "You must choose, Jason," the figure said, its voice a low murmur in the oppressive silence. "The Watchers are waiting. They will not wait forever." The weight of the words hung heavily in the air. Jason felt his heart pounding in his chest, his mind racing as the chaos of his emotions swirled around him. Could he really do this? Could he truly accept the power that had been offered to him? The power to shape the world, to change everything, to defy the very laws of the universe? But at what cost? Jason glanced at the stone, still pulsing with an otherworldly energy, its surface shimmering like liquid light. It was as if the very essence of the universe was contained within it, waiting to be unleashed. But he knew that taking it, embracing its power, would come with consequences. Consequences he wasn't sure he could live with. "The price is yourself." The words of the figure echoed in his mind, and for the first time Jason understood their meaning fully. The power he sought was not a gift. It was a test of his humanity, a test of his resolve. To accept the power was to lose himself, his memories, his emotions, his very identity. He looked around him. The world was shifting, the air growing heavier, as if the very fabric of reality was bending under the weight of the choices he had made. The Watchers were close now, their presence like a shadow hanging over him, waiting for him to act. Choose, Jason, choose. It was all he had been hearing for what felt like an eternity. The choice was his to make, and yet the stakes were so high, so terrifyingly vast, that it seemed impossible to make. How could he choose between the survival of humanity and his own soul? "Jason," the figure said again, its voice softer, now almost like a whisper. "You know what you must do, but did he really? The power he held in his hand could save worlds, could change the course of history. He could undo the wrongs that had been done, prevent the catastrophes that were inevitable, and create a future where humanity thrived. He could use the power to heal the planet, to end hunger and suffering, to bring about a new era of peace and prosperity. But there was a price. There was always a price. Jason's eyes flickered over to the figure beside him. It was calm, composed, as though it had been through this many times before, as though it had watched others struggle with the same decision, only to fall prey to their own desires. "The power is not for you alone," the figure said, its voice almost regretful. "It is for the universe, for balance, for the greater good." Jason swallowed hard. The greater good. Was he willing to sacrifice his humanity for that? Was he willing to become something else entirely, something beyond human, for the sake of a future he couldn't even fully grasp? "Then what?" Jason asked, his voice raw with emotion. "What happens if I refuse? What happens if I turn my back on it?" The figure was silent for a long time. For a moment, it almost seemed to hesitate, as if weighing its own words carefully. "If you refuse," it finally said, "you will lose everything. The world you know will fall into ruin. The Watchers will take what you have refused to claim, and it will never be the same again. Your choice will have consequences either way." Jason's heart thudded painfully in his chest. There was no escaping this, no turning back. The consequences were inevitable. Whether he accepted the power or rejected it, the world would never be the same. The Watchers were here. They were waiting. Jason's mind spun with the possibilities. The weight of the decision threatened to crush him. He thought of his family, of the friends he had lost, of the world he had once known. He thought of the countless lives that hung in the balance, of the future that was slipping away with every passing second. But he also thought of himself, his humanity, his soul. Could he bear to lose it? Could he stand to become something else, something beyond human, even for the sake of saving others? Jason took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the stone hum through his fingertips. The power was intoxicating, seductive. It called to him, promising greatness, urging him to take it. And yet, a part of him recoiled. A part of him wanted to preserve the essence of who he was, to hold on to the humanity that had defined him, even if it meant sacrificing everything else. His heart wrenched with the weight of the decision. But in that moment, he understood. He understood the true meaning of the choice. It wasn't about saving the world. It wasn't about the power. It was about preserving what made him human, the ability to choose. He made his decision. With a final resolute breath, Jason stepped forward. He raised his hand and placed it firmly on the stone. "I choose to remain human," he whispered. The moment his fingers touched the surface of the stone, the world exploded around him. The air crackled with energy, and the ground beneath his feet trembled violently. The Watcher's presence was overwhelming, their voices filling his mind with a deafening roar. But Jason stood firm. He felt the power surge through him, felt it, trying to tear him apart, to strip away everything that made him who he was. But he fought back, pushing against the tide of power with every ounce of strength he had left. And then, suddenly, it stopped. The energy receded, and the world around him fell silent. The stone was no longer glowing, its power extinguished, as though it had been consumed by Jason's choice. The figure beside him nodded, its eyes filled with an expression that almost seemed like approval. "You have chosen wisely," it said, its voice softer now. "You have chosen humanity." Jason's chest heaved with exhaustion. His heart was still racing, but there was a peace within him now, a peace that had eluded him throughout this entire journey. The Watchers were gone. The world was still intact, and Jason was still human. He had made the right choice, and in that moment he realized something that would stay with him forever. The true power of humanity lies not in what we can do, but in what we choose not to. The end.